I think they make it feel as if we never we never fought for our own people. They make it feel as if we just gave you out and say take them away. But that is false. We want.
Welcome to day 5 of our tour in Ghana. This is one of 2 days that we found that was the hardest to look at the history of how we got from the west coast of Africa to the diaspora. Let's check out our itinerary for the day. We started out as usual with our breakfast at Tang Palace and then quickly got on the road to Cape Coast, which is 4 hours away from Accra. The road was paved and dirt in some areas, but if you look out the window, you see, yes, they're mining in the middle of the road. They're disrupting a community to extract the precious minerals from the soil and sell them back to the West. So, and some people in this community have to walk 6 miles around this mining in order just to get to the other side. During our trip to Cape Coast, about halfway through, we stopped at a bathroom break. Yes, they do have these bathrooms all throughout the road to Cape Coast. They're modern bathrooms, so no going into the bushes or, squatting or anywhere like that. They have modern bathrooms. And also they have convenience stores where you can get certain snacks and things that will tide you over until you get to the next village. Mimosa is the slave river site. This is not spoken of in U.S. history, so it was a shock when we found out about it. To understand all the atrocities that have occurred on the African continent really comes to light. You really have to understand we didn't just give up. We didn't just let them just take us. And no, on a large portion, Africans did not sell Africans. This site is frequently visited by school children and universities just to understand the atrocities of the West so that they will never be repeated. If you look at the sign, it says, never again. As you can see, these are university students that are coming. They're from Ghana, so they don't understand everything that happened in slavery in the West Coast and in the Indies and around the world. The sub-Saharan slave trade was just as brutal as the transatlantic slave trade. So do yourself a favor and find out about the sub-Saharan slave trade, and largely that's still going on to this day.
May the souls of our ancestors rest in perfect peace. Ashe.
Ashe.
So, we are here to learn about the pains of the past. Sometimes I ask God, why did you give me this service to render? But I always have my ancestors telling me that if I don't speak about them, who would speak about them? Sometimes it disturbs my emotional balances, because my job is to always tell this. Now look, before the coming of the Europeans to Africa, Africans have a slavery institution that was already ongoing. But for me, Kofi, I have stopped talking about it because historians and academia have already concluded that whatever it is that we were practicing in here, it was the indenture servitude. With the indenture servitude, you have rights, you have privileges, you have your opinion, you have your family. It was through this system that people became chiefs of their communities. It was through these systems that people became prominent members of the society. So with this system, you always have a chance to grow. Now, it was so different from the chattel slavery that was imposed on us by the Europeans. But many often at times, they try so hard to justify between the chattel slavery and that of the indenture servitude. Because in their minds, they wish both were the same. But when you read their own legislations, you will know the far difference between the two. When you read the law on slavery in South Carolina in 1669, this is what their own law said, that all free men would have absolute right over their enslaved persons, and they could do whatsoever they wish to do to you, and no one will question them. So in that law, we never existed as humans. We existed as a commodity. The difference between an enslaved person and your sunglasses is that an enslaved person has a soul. But the same way you could easily get annoyed and break your sunglasses, that was how the spirit and souls of a slave got broken. Now this system of slavery in Carolina in 1669 has already been introduced to us here in Ghana in 1471.
Right.
That was when the first European arrived. They were the Portuguese, and they were led by Prince Henry the Navigator. Now this is what the history book will not let you know. When the Portuguese landed on the coast of Africa, immediately they saw our forebears. They were the first race to give us names. And the first name they named us was the children of the sun. Why would they ever name us the children of the sun? Because the sun easily smiles on our skin, but they couldn't take the strength and the energy from the sun. From afar, they saw how organized and how united we were, because our way of life was more communal. So we all come together, we work together, we laugh together. So when they knew all this about us, immediately they knew that this group of people are so special. We want to know what makes them so special. But how would I know about you if you don't give me the chance to know? That was where our forebears had it wrong. They allowed themselves to be manipulated. And the Europeans used the best part of us in getting into us. And you know what that is? Hospitality.
That's right.
Even to date, we are loving and loving without thinking. We believe we are born to love everyone. Our ancestors opened up for them, fed them, clothed them, and gave them a place to sleep. Because whilst we were growing up, our parents told us to love, and that's all that we think. I am not saying we shouldn't love, no. But when loving, let's observe the energies first. Our ancestors did not. They loved freely, and that brought us to where we are now. So these people came into us, lived among us, and settled within us. So when they settle within us, then they have to study what is it about us that makes us so special. So they started to learn from us medical sciences. They learned how our traditional healers could just take 2 herbs, boil them, and heal thousands of people with it. They saw how we built, they saw our strength, they saw our talent, they also saw our weakness. We were not perfect, no, but at least we were excellent. When they saw all this about us, fast forward in 1492, supposedly, the New World was discovered. How do you discover a land that people are already settled on it? So when they discovered that land, because they knew the strength in us, they wanted people to develop their communities. So the street cannot justify slavery. So slavery has to move all the way to the church. And a Portuguese priest, in the person of Bartolomeo de las Casas, it was this man that said, may we be taken in order to develop the new world. Many often at times, they tell you they bought slaves and took them to the new world. But for me, I always feel that real estate employer, a developer, and you have to recruit some employees in your firm, would you go for experience or inexperience? So would you think that they will take people without experience and nothing from their land to a land to develop? That is it. That's the first point for you to understand. So they took away our best and they turned them into slaves. Now during the discourse, the sun. Now during the discourse of the slave trade, slave markets also played an important role because the market was where the two devils met. Ghana alone had 63 slave markets. 57 of this market was managed by the Europeans. But of all these markets, one historian, in the person of Akosia Dumapedi, in a book entitled The History of the Indigenous Slavery in Ghana, from the 15th century to 19th century, identified that of all these markets, it was only two markets that played the most important role. The largest and the busiest. The largest market could be found at the northern part of the country, and the name was Salaga Slave Market. It was the largest market in West Africa since the 19th century. It could be found at the northern borders of our country, and the largest and the second largest market is where we are now, Asenman. Why was Asenman the second largest? Because this was the only market that was closer to the three dungeons, Fort Amsterdam, Cape Coast, and Elgina. So captives that were captured from the north, in chains and in shackles, barefooted and half naked, with no food and no water, they have to walk for 700 miles just to get to this land. 700 miles is almost 5 months of a journey, if all things being equal. So just imagine, walking in this world in chains and shackles. Many historians like Alex Afo, in his book entitled The Cry and Lamentation of Our Ancestors, Chronicles of African Untold Stories, stated that from 40 to 60% of them died in the interior. But for me, I believe more than that died. The saddest part of the journey is that we don't even know where they were buried. That we could also go there and give them some peace of rest. Were they even buried? No. They were disposed of for the vultures to feed on them. So our forebears have never known peace. They have never had rest. Their soul has never slept. Because it was the land that's where you came from, so you have to end up in the land. But our ancestors end up in the tummy of animals. But what do we have to do? They still have to persevere and continue the journey. If all of them could have died, you wouldn't be here. So they have to look upon you in order to survive. Now they landed there at the market. They were so tired. In here was where they were given something to eat and something to drink. Not because they wanted to feed them fat, but because they knew that in the market you need to have a little strength before they could sell you. Broken bottles was used in shaving them, just for them to look good, before they were made to walk all the way through the path to the river to take their last bath. At the riverside, they went through their auction, and they went through their... and they went through their branding. But those of our forebears who could not continue the journey are those that remained on this land. For them, they were killed and buried from the edge of the grass all the way to the river. So everywhere here served as a burial site. That was why when you're coming through the main gate, the gate looked very short. So many of you came through like this. Yes, unconsciously, you already paid your respects to the land. The few ones that were able to continue the journey are those that landed at the three dungeons, Fort Amsterdam, Cape Coast, and Elmina. They stayed in the dungeons for 3 months, awaiting the return of the slave ship. In 3 months' time, the slave ship arrived. And before our ancestors were made to onboard the slave ship, they had to go through a particular door. And do you know the name on this door?
Doors of no return.
No return.
The name on that door itself self-explanatory. When you pass through it, you're never going to come back home. I am not there in the past, but I believe many of our ancestors died at that door because they would never want to leave. They cannot go onto the slave ship and leave their family behind. They fought. The guns were used in intimidating them. Many died at that door, and few were taken onto the slave ship. But now, today, many of us believe that the door of no return is just a door. But it is not just a door. It was a direct European policy. And the policy was simple. Let us make sure that when this group of people cross this door, they should never come back. And if they are so stubborn like you, and you still insist in coming back, let them come back as confused as ever. Today, are you not back? Which part of Africa do you come from? Do you know? Then the DNA will come in and make it confused. 5% Afghanistan, 7% Ukrainian, 2% Togolese, and the confusion galore. Because the old impression was, don't come back home. But have you asked yourself, if that is the policy, how were they able to make sure it worked on us? It was simple. It was started at the door of no return. That was where they took away the most important part of us.
Our identity.
Our names.
Yes.
When they took those names away from us, it's made it very difficult for us to come back. In African naming system, you're not given a choice. It was a life assignment. So your name should connect it to your community, your destiny, and your plan. So I might not know this brother of mine, but immediately he mentions his name to me now, I should be able to tell you where he's coming from. So if all those names were taken away from us, where did we start? How do we even know where we are coming from? I am sure you've watched this movie, The Root. You see, this man was beaten to the point of death. But why did he denounce everything but not his name? Because that is his only spiritual connection to his land. I am a typical example of my name. My name is Kofi Ameni. Ameni means a river. In all my academic credentials, Masters in Human Resource Management, I have never seen myself work with a river. But my name being a river today, I work with a river. So, but on that era, our ancestors were in so much pain. The pain was so much that they have to forgo of their own names to acquire on themselves their slave names just for them to have a little respite. But the day our ancestors put on their selves the names of the European counterparts, that was where you and I became inferior. Because there's a saying that you cannot fight and win the person that named you. So if that saying is true, who named you? Is your name, or is the name a name of a slave owner? If your name is the name of a slave owner, how do you fight and win them? You see, when dad and mom gave birth to you, why did they give you names? Because you belong to them, right? That is why for the past 400 years now, these Europeans have been writing our own story for ourselves to read. Because they believe they have their names on us, so they named us, so they own us, so they have the right to write our own story. But the time has come for us to detach ourselves from those names, for them to know we don't belong to them. And also be able to write the story of our own ancestors, but not them. Because if they can write, we can equally write better. And if they can lie, we can also lie better. So the time has come for us to change the narrative and tell our own story. But in order for the story to be told, a curse needs to be broken first. And that curse is the door of no return. That door needs to be changed to the door of return. But the question is, how do you do that? That is why I'm going to walk you to the graveyard. And I'm going to tell you something about the 3 tombs before we go to the river. So please, let's get to it. First from the left, from the right, a name is Madame Krista from Kingston, Jamaica. The one in the middle is Samuel Carson from New York, US of A. So Madame Krista was a young, beautiful lady who was captured but landed in Jamaica as an enslaved African. But she never saw herself as a slave. She would rather prefer to die than to call a slave. While she was in prison in Kingston, Jamaica, she was the first female who decided to starve herself to death in order to push for the abolishment of the slave trade. But while she did that, she endured the worst punishment of her life when she had her feet all chiseled out in an attempt to cause her to see. The pain was so much for Madame Krista to bear. In 1830, she lost her life. And according to historians, when she was about to pass on, this was the only thing she said: "Bring me back home someday." I am not sure she knew she would, but somewhere, somehow, the remains were brought back. In the middle is Samuel Carson, the first African American without any formal education. Landed in the U.S. Navy, served with all his strength and might, died at the age of 35 years. but he wasn't given the fitting burial. Whilst he was serving the US of A, he was seen as an American. But immediately he died, Americans told him, "You are not one of us." But we don't care, we don't even want America to bury him, because America has always been receiving them. So on the 31st day of July 1998, it was a day for our two ancestors to come back home, in order for them to change the door of no return at the Cape Coast Dungeon. And on the 31st day of July 1998, the two of our ancestors landed at the Cape Coast at the Kotoka International Airport. By bus, they were transported from Accra, and they got to a community called Abanze, which is closer to Cape Coast. When they got to that community, for them, the youth of Abanze just blocked the road, and they said nobody will pass through this land. They are our ancestors, give them to us. But the politicians said no, they wouldn't give them to the people. But when they tried to move their vehicles, none of the vehicles were able to pass. And the priest of Abanze came out and said, "You are making it wrong. When our ancestors were taken away, they used the Atlantic Ocean. They left so many energies and powers in that ocean. So when you are bringing them back, they have to go for that same power before they come back home." So the youth of Abanze voluntarily gave out their beautiful canoes, and they escorted Madam Krista and Samuel Cousin on the Atlantic Ocean before they could get to the Cape Coast Dungeons. When they got in there, they were made to pass through the door of no return. And when they passed through that door, the door was changed. Immediately they passed through that door. It was very sunny that day, but immediately they crossed that line, it started to rain. It rained all day that we never even brought them out from the dungeons. They slept in the dungeons for a day. And the following day, being the 1st of August 1998, the two were brought back in here, just to be buried here. Why were they brought back in here? Because this place also served as a cemetery. So they should come back and tell those they left that the journey was started. And that day is on the 1st of August, is when we celebrate our Emancipation Festival. Now fast forward in 2019, it was a year of return celebration. The Prime Minister of Barbados, Her Excellency Nia Amomoti, also decided to have remains buried on this land. So she also excavated most slave cemeteries from Newton, Barbados. And all the bones that she had, she brought them in a beautiful casket on the 11th day of November 2019, and that's the 13th December day. Immediately after the burial, groups also petitioned that they also wanted to be buried here. But we cannot say no to you, because this land equally belongs to you. So inside this graveyard has been given out, and today we have 513 ashes on this land. The trade was abolished in 1807, but not slavery. With slavery, I don't know the date. I only know what the book says. That in the US of A, 1865. Yes. British colony 1834, French colony 1846. I don't believe slavery has been abolished. It has evolved into a new form. And today, you and I, we have moved away from slavery in chains and shackles to mental slavery. And that is why Bob Marley told us we should emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, because none other than ourselves can free our mind. And that is why Peter Tosh also said, don't matter the nationality. As long as you are a black person, you are an African. Let's make a short walk to the river. Fighting. They make it feel as if we never fought for our own people. They make it feel as if we just gave you out and said take them away. But that is false. We won so many battles, we lost so many battles. But the difference was the guns that they were using. And the guns were taking a lot of us. So I cannot look at my brother for my brother to be killed. So instead, we decided to build fortress in order to save our people. So in the northern part of Ghana, they rely on building defense walls in surrounding their communities. So then when you go to Gulu and Narilegu in the north, you're going to see evidences of those walls that they built. Others moved to the mountainous areas. On top of the mountains, you're scared, you cannot even get there. And others were in the caves. But those that were in the caves, coming out was very tough, because you don't know who's waiting for you. So whenever they come out to find something, they were captured. So it got to a point that the elders of the cave brainstormed and said, how can we come out safely? And that was where a plant came in mind. That plant ironically became a drink in the US of A. And this drink is loved by the black community. But in here, it was a plant that saved our ancestors in the cave. And the name of the plant and the drink is the Mimosa. The Mimosa is not a drink in here. It was a plant that saved us. Those that in the cave planted it along strategically placed positions to surround their caves. So whenever they are coming out, It is the plant that tells them to come out or to stay indoors. And this is the plant, and it's how it comes closer. Can you touch it for me? Take your hand off. What do you see? Take it fine.
Oh, wow.
No.
Oh, wow.
You see it? Immediately touch it. It's close, you can touch it yourself. Now growing. So they have to make sure the plant is fully open at where they have planted it. So if this plant is fully open, then there's no movement around their cave. So now they can come out and do whatever it is they can do. But if in coming out they find out that the plant looks like this, close at wherever, then it means that it is not safe to come out. So this plant saved a lot of our people. Ironically, I have changed the name from Mimosa because the plant that saved mindful rest can never be a drink. So I call it the destiny plant. It is everywhere in the Caribbean, but in the southern part of the US of A, that is where you can find it. So whenever you see this Mimosa plant, it's just telling you that I saved many of you, and this is the importance of the plant. You can take.
It's a surreal feeling to walk through these doors and to see this path. But now that I'm here, it's hard for me just to imagine the person that's responsible for my family of coming over here in the diaspora walked this path, took their last bath here, and probably made a self-pact of, I'm going to survive this no matter what. But it's amazing just to think how many people walked down here, how many people survived, and how many people died.
We are at the slave river. This was where our ancestors took their last bath before being taken away from us. When they were brought back in here, they never knew this was the last time they were going to take their bath, go to their first ever action in London. For some, when they saw the river, they thought they were bringing us here for us to drink. For some also, immediately they saw the river, they saw it as their escape route to escape. And some also saw it as a way to say goodbye by committing suicide. Many of them didn't know what they were being subjected to. They asked so many questions, but nobody gave them any answers. So it was on this land that they understood whatever was happening to them. While they were chained around the trees in it, fathers saw their wives being taken away by someone, and the father would wish to fight, but because he's in chains and shackles, he can't fight. He looked on helplessly, seeing somebody taking his wife away, and that dad would have that pain in him forever. Mothers also saw their husband being beaten to death. They wanted to really die together with their husband, but they are limited. It was in here that mothers feel the pain, but they pretend that it's all well for their children not to know. But even the kids were not that naive. Even the kids know the pains that their parents were suffering. It was in here that siblings tried to protect each other by making sure none of them died. But the pains was so much that they still died. And the pains that this land has seen is what has made this place look very peaceful. Because the trees are not ready to tell us what they saw. The land is not ready to speak. But the only thing that is ready to speak to us is the river. That is what the river is speaking. I don't know what the river is saying. And the river is where our ancestors took their last bath, and that is the slave. And that is the slave river. This is where they took their last bath, and that is Ama Edisa. So when they walked them down to this river, they bathed them in here before they brought them in here for them to go through exercises and smear their skins for them to go through their auction and branding. But today, I don't understand why on this land, this place was named the last bar. And the same way, the door of no return. The two mean the same thing. So today, if we are coming back home, rivers are speaking, but I don't know what they are saying. But our ancestors have a sweet connection with rivers. They put many of their strength in rivers, and they told us to get to that river. So when you listen to Negro spirituals, they always sing about rivers and waters. They told us to get to that river and get baptized. They told us to wade in the water. Today, we are back to this river. You're going to go down to that river. You could touch it. Whatever you want to say today, you could say it. And when you're done, you could bless yourselves in the river. So let's make a short video.
As we descended down the staircase to the last bath, just thinking about my ancestors that ended up in North Carolina and how they could have possibly taken their last bath right here, and how many people that have lost their lives trying to escape from here. As a tour guide said, the only thing that's speaking is the river. In this, you will see Beverly standing in the river. I couldn't touch it, but just to look at it. Just to understand that someone that helped create me, that brought me in this world, and because of their sacrifice and what they did, and right here taking this last bath before they went to auction, made sure that I was here and was successful in the diaspora. Remember, as African Americans, we stand on the shoulders of the people that sacrificed and gave their lives right here. This site is just as important as the slave dungeons. We are literally descendants of the greatest people in this world. And it is time for us to come back. And so I stress a lot, come back to here, come back to Africa. And the reason why I say come back, you've never been, but you have to come back because your ancestors left here in chains. And you have to come back in order to experience just what they went through in order to make sure that you had just a viable chance in whatever they would end up. So I hope this message, if you're in the diaspora in the United States, in Canada, throughout the Caribbean, or in the Middle East, we are spread all over the world. If this video reaches you, it's almost your duty to come back and to place your feet in this water, just like my wife, and make that connection. 400 years we experienced slavery in the United States, but over 600 years, slavery and oppression has affected the African continent, especially Ghana. Psalms 137:3. For there, they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they that wasted us required us as mirth. saying, "Sing us one of those songs of Zion." My grandmother used to tell us stories of how we used to sing by the river. And that's what comes to mind when we stand here connected by hands and praying for each other and praying for the strength of our family. This is something that our ancestors would have never done. That's ascend these stairs, free men and women as we are today. But we're also told of the atrocities that occurred right here in this area before the bamboo grew up and before everything looked a lot different. This is where we were sold. This is where we were split up. This is where we received our first branding, telling us where we were going, whether Cape Coast or El Mino. And this is the last time that we saw our family members.
So, for example, if you have been installed as a chief and you lived and died as a good chief, your stool, like a throne, will be blackened, and it's going to be black. It's going to be black, and your name will be on it as a blackened stool. So, if the community have only seen 10 chiefs, 10 good chiefs, then the community will have 10 blackened stools, and all those blackened stools will be in this room. So, when I am installed as a new chief as Kofi, I need to walk to this room blindfolded and pick one of the blackened stools. The name on that blackened stool becomes my public name. Now, if I also rule with that name and I also die as a good chief, my name Kofi will also be given a blackened stool, so that somebody someday will choose my name. But if you die as a bad chief, nobody chooses your name, and that is all, and your history and everything is off. So this was what this room was for, and now we have stopped using this room. So we have names of some chiefs on this wall.
As I leave this place, I take one last picture of the path that my ancestors would have walked in order to get to the river. I could just imagine walking this with shackles and chains around my neck.
When she found it, she couldn't take it along. So she has to leave it here for us. It has been here for over 28 years. So basically, with this last information for today, I'll bring the thought to an end. I just went to the hospital yesterday. I'm just coming from it, so my energy level is very down. So I would say when you come to Ghana, there is one thing to do, there's one thing not to do. The only thing to do is to chill, okay? But you make sure you don't freeze, that's all. So chill, but don't freeze. So thank you for coming home. Enjoy your stay in Ghana. Thank you. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know you're strong already.
As I'm leaving this area, I'm reminded of sacrifice that was made by my ancestors just for me to survive. People just didn't give up. People just didn't willingly surrender. They fought. They hid. They were overcome by many armies and overcome by men with rifles. So you might ask yourself, why didn't they just run away? Well, there are towns around here where people that have run away have actually come out and later made towns. And so they will never forget what happened here. They frequently visit here, and this is always a sight that they will never forget. Yes, this is a beach where we're having lunch, and this restaurant is open year-round. You can get anything there from red to Ghanaian traditional meals to American meals. They have everything there. We didn't miss a beat. We were so hungry that we did not take pictures of the food, but I can tell you the service was impeccable, and we really enjoyed our time there. Cape Coast Castle, which really should be known as Cape Coast Dungeon. But to be here in person is a surreal effect. To think about the pain, the atrocities, the death that occurred here, and the many things that were just lost here. Not only the loss of lives, but the loss of identity, the loss of name. And when we died, our bodies were fed to the sea. We should never forget what happened here. We take the pictures just to remember that we were here, that we understood what happened here and why it happened here. It's easy to just brush it off and just say, get over it. But when you stand here, realize this. None of this was built by our hands. This cell was for the soldiers that were unruly. This cell had more air than the dungeons that we're going to show you in a little bit. Here is the male dungeon. These are the doors leading down to the male dungeon. As you can tell, the doorway is wide and the path leading down to the dungeon is steep. This is designed to defeat you and sap your strength from you. The floor is the same. Can you imagine coming down here with shackles on your feet and chains around your neck? 3,000 to 4,000 of us were kept in this area. Many of us lost our lives. After leaving the male site, we quickly went up to the courtyard and was told about the 3 people that were buried in the courtyard. One is a mistress, one is a soldier, and one is a traitor to our people. Beverly's looking into the doors of the female side of the dungeon. They were kept up on the courtyard side in order for the soldiers to have easy access to them. Here we're looking at the actual doors of no return that has been sealed up and an altar has been built in front of it. This is where people come and do their libations and pay homage to our ancestors. This is the final holding cell for us before we got on the slave ships. As you see, we walked through those doors and was tightly packed in. And this is where we left the west coast of Africa, never to return. Take a look at the slave ships and how packed in we were. After leaving the Cape Coast dungeon, we checked into our rooms at the Ridge Royal Hotel. These accommodations are just as nice as the Tang Palace. We ate dinner at the restaurant within the hotel. The menu was impeccable. Look around in the hotel room and the standards are just the same as the Tang Palace. We were very impressed. We actually had to take a break from what we saw in finding out the truth about our history.
walk before you go up. Go down. Be careful. Go down.